Well, welcome everyone. We're going to have a fun day talking about Peggy Lindberg, who's my aunt. And I'm looking for the minister. Where's the minister? You are up first, sir. So this is Pastor Dave McRoberts, who we've managed to talk into coming out of retirement to be here today. So.
Wow. Vicki,
Yes.
where's this picture from?
You know, it was a professionally done portrait for one of the magazine articles.
Yeah. But she looked like that every day.
Yes, she did.
She really did. That's just, thanks for choosing that picture. I'm Dave McRoberts, and it was my privilege and honor to be Peggy's minister for many years, beginning in the mid-'80s. And we gather here today to celebrate Peggy. We celebrate her life, or it's listed in the program, Unravelling Peggy's Secrets to Friendship. And there must have been many, many secrets because she had many, many friends. Early in my ministry, began in the mid-'60s, I learned that just about all the big decisions and all the big offices in the church were held by men. However, it was the women who provided most of the encouragement and joy and service. And I learned that very quickly. And in my case, it was women like Peggy. You may know that Jesus had disciples, 12 disciples, 12 men disciples. But during his 3 years of ministry on this earth, it was the women who were so faithful, so loyal, so encouraging. They were behind the scenes, and Jesus depended upon them. They were his special friends. In fact, when he was crucified, it was the women who were nearby, grieving. And when he rose again, it was first made known to the women who were instructed to go tell the disciples who were hiding. The women were his special friends. So that's one of Peggy's secrets. Peggy and Jesus were friends, special friends. And she lived out that friendship in the church and in the community, in the world, by passing that friendship on to others, including us. Oh, she loved the church. She loved to be at church. She was so faithful, so optimistic, so generous, giving and serving. Next time you're at Asbury United Methodist Church, look up and to the right, and there's faceted glass windows on both sides of the sanctuary. But up there, Noah and the ark, that was given by Peggy, a beautiful window in that church. And she was so generous towards our music program and our children's program. She was one of those quiet givers. No one else needed to know. I happened to know Dale Catnall, who was our financial secretary, so I could learn where these wonderful gifts were coming from. And how many people did Peggy take out to eat. She had us over. We had 4 boys. Still have 4 boys. She had us over to her house or took us up to Black Hawk many times. Our food budget went down. It was wonderful. Now, just to share some scripture that reminds me of Peggy. From God's Word, the Gospel of John, chapter 15, Jesus speaking to his disciples on the night before he was betrayed, before the arrest and the crucifixion. Of course, it was Thursday night. We call it Maundy Thursday. John writes, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my command, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love one another. I have chosen you. Follow my command. Love each other." Love each other, that was Peggy's and her friendship made that possible and a reality with Jesus. And again, you and I are the recipients of that friendship, that relationship with Jesus. And we celebrate her by passing on that friendship to others, to each other, to this world, as Peggy did. Or as our Lord would say, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." I've wondered what Peggy's favorite hymn might be. And when I think of Peggy, there's one old gospel song that it's one of the first ones we learned, even as children, way back when. Many of you will know this hymn, but it's Peggy. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weary and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge, take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms he'll take and shield thee, thou wilt find a solace there. I wonder if Peggy knew that old gospel song by heart. You know, she really had tough times too. Through the years, there were very difficult times. But she remained a friend to all because she had a special friendship in Jesus, who gave her comfort and guidance and peace. May we commit Peggy to the Lord's presence in eternity. Let us pray. Our God, we thank you for your friendship through Jesus Christ. And we thank you for Peggy's faithful friendship to you, that she is in your eternal presence, where she's with her friends, and likely making many, many more friends. Oh God, help us to get the message that we are to love you and share that love with one another. In the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Thank you, Lord, for Peggy.
Peggy and I have been planning this for a couple years, actually. This next hymn is one of, Peggy planned everything. she's a planner. So this next song is the one song that she chose. So the one at the end is she said, "Surprise me." So, but anyway, if you'll hopefully join us in singing this. And here's the words. The back is missing one line. Oops, this thing actually creates a shadow. I could turn it on. All right. So we are gathered here today to celebrate an amazing woman. One of the impressive things about Peggy Lindberg is how many friendships she managed to nourish throughout her lifetime. Today, I hope that we can unravel some of Peggy's secrets to friendship. So this is Fred and Ann Berger, her parents, who they lived in Gothenburg, Nebraska, which was a small town of about 3,000 people. And Peggy was their only child. And it was, the pregnancy was a bit challenging. So Ann actually moved to Lincoln for the last portion of her pregnancy because she was 35 when she had Peggy. Then Peggy was born in a larger hospital. And then Fred drove the 2 hours to come and pick them up. So these two together really blended to make Peggy what she was. Her mother was a very strong believer in friendship. So she was college educated and was a teacher. And she actually kept in touch with 6 friends from college for 60 years. So they did a round robin letter thing for 60 years. She also taught Peggy about giving. So she was very involved in PEO, which is a philanthropical education organization. And Peggy began when she was a young teenager in Gothenburg, and then she carried that throughout her life and was very active in the chapter here as well. So Peggy learned to love travel from her father. They did a lot of traveling. So they had an Airstream trailer, and they would go to Mexico quite often. Here's Peggy and her grandfather. And he also liked to go to Yellowstone, was another favorite place to go. They even went to, Airstream caravans. So another thing that Peggy inherited from her mother was a love of sweets. So as we know, Peggy liked her sweets. And she learned the saying, no meal is complete without dessert from her mother. And so I know I've heard of people talking about Peggy as an angel, but I must share a naughty childhood thing that she did. So she actually went into her father's underwear drawer to his nickel collection and would steal nickels to go and buy ice cream cones. So after her parents passed, she actually took the remaining nickels in to be appraised, and one of the nickels was actually worth like $200. So Peggy's conclusion from that was that she may have been overpaying for her ice cream. So Peggy went to college in Lincoln, and for the last 3 years of college, she lived in her sorority, which was Alpha Gamma Delta. And they actually had formal dinners in the evening and had a sorority mother that taught them etiquette and, how to properly eat shrimp and how to carry on conversations, which we all know Peggy was an expert at. When she was a senior, some of them were selected to go on a trip to the UN in New York City. And here they are on Broadway, one of many times that Peggy went to Broadway in her lifetime. So when she was Christmas time, she was talked to a friend of hers who they were going to go home. So Gothenburg was 2 hours away, as I mentioned. And there was a caravan of guys with cars, and they would give the girls from college a ride west to their hometowns. So Peggy happened to get in a car with Don Lindberg. And this began their love affair. And they dated for 4 months. And this is a picture. You guys recognize where this is, Dale. So this is the Platte River in Nebraska behind them. And Peggy graduated with her bachelor's in education. And Don was drafted into the Army and went off to be trained for the Korean War. So this started their exchange of love letters for almost 2 years. And one of the treasures that was found when I cleaned out her apartment was that these letters still exist. And I haven't yet explored them all, but they're a treasure trove. But they wrote each other almost every day. At least Peggy did. And so Peggy started teaching, so she always taught fairly young kids. And Don ended up being stationed in Washington, D.C., fortunately. And so then she took a bus to Washington and went to visit him. And I couldn't resist this shot because it's just one of many cute outfits that Peggy has had throughout her lifetime. We always know Peggy looked good, no matter what. She'd come out of the hospital and say, I need a haircut, and I need to have my nails done. It was like the first thing that she took care of. So they would actually talk once a week, and Don proposed over the phone to her and mailed the engagement ring to her. So they got married in the summer of 1956 in Gothenburg. And this is actually my sister Linda and Peggy's cousin Sheila as the Flower Girls. And they went on a honeymoon to the Black Hills for 5 days. And then they came back and Peggy went from a city girl to a farmer's wife and moved into this house. And this, when I found this shot, it just cracked me up because here she is in her white dress and her white shoes in front of the Quonset hut, but at the time this was a very high-tech and fancy building, so it was a special corn dryer. So she sort of got her act together with looking like the farmer's wife. Here she is. They're headed to his parents for dinner, and these are both of their parents. So the guy in the end is Don's father, and he gave Peggy a very special wedding present: a pregnant cow. This is her pregnant cow. Now she's sort of getting the country girl look together here. I just couldn't resist this cute shot. But they actually enjoyed hunting, so they would actually go duck hunting and pheasant hunting on the property. So the property is right next to the Platte River in Nebraska. Don had bought the farm, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So a 200-acre farm, which was always his dream to do. And here's Peggy. I know you guys might be surprised that my aunt is a gun-toting Democrat. And so they farmed. So Peggy actually, when you first start farming, you don't make a lot of money. So Peggy was actually supporting them, continuing to teach, and Don was farming. But he continued to have some health issues. And so he would just be walking along and fall down for no apparent reason. And he was diagnosed as having multiple sclerosis. And so, one of the things that Peggy was really good at is sort of, and Dawn, they were a team. This is her sort of philosophy. And it's like, what am I going to do to make the best possible life I can under the current circumstances? And she lived by that. So they worked it out that, well, he's not going to farm, so he's going to teach farming. So they left the farm, and his father started farming the farm. And they moved to Lincoln and began living with cats. So again, she's supporting them. Well, and he's going to school, so he got his master's degree in Lincoln, and then he got accepted. So Peggy loved Christmas, and there's so many portraits of them together for Christmas. But we only have a small amount of time today. But I thought this one was the cutest. I couldn't resist this one. So they moved to Madison, Wisconsin. This is Midvale Boulevard. Bought a small house there. And so Don was continuing to have problems, so he saw what turned out to be a very smart intern or resident who noticed that his symptoms didn't quite line up with MS. So they did some additional tests, and it was discovered that he had a tumor in his neck right alongside his spinal cord, which was what was causing the problem. And so they did surgery on Don, and he ended up being quadriplegic after the surgery and lost ability to autonomously breathe. And this is Peggy next to his side. So Peggy continued to teach and visit Don twice a day, I'm told, while he was in the hospital. So this was October that he had this in 1960. So they're both 28 years old, and they've been married for 4 years. So, family comes now, it's Christmas. This is his grandmother, his sister, and niece, oldest niece, my sister Sandy, visiting him. But all these photos you see, Don has a big smile. And, I'm going to talk a little bit about Don today because you really can't talk about Peggy's life without talking about Don. It's just one of the things that makes her special. So eventually Don improved so that he could get out of the iron lung for about 25 minutes a day, and he liked to go outside. So this is out on the rooftop. This is Peggy's dad has pushed him out so he could see a little bit of sunshine. And I had to include this one because obviously he's got Peggy's very fancy, sunglasses on. So you notice it says USVA, so he was declared a 100% disabled veteran, so that certainly helped take care of him during his lifetime. And he eventually improved, and they moved him to Chicago so that he could go to a specialty hospital where he could learn to get away from the iron lung and learn to breathe with a rocking bed at night. And Peggy again would visit him every weekend. So now this is the first time that he's been out of the hospital for 1 year, and it's Thanksgiving. And you gotta love this medical transport van. You know, and I love how the guy jazzed it up by putting on a bow tie and a black jacket. But, you know, again, you know, Don's got this big old smile on his face. He never felt sorry for himself at all. So, again, the family, you know, comes to you, and Peggy is the hostess. So this is my mother who's feeding Don, so Don can't feed himself, and his brother Earl, and their spouses, and again, Sandy is there. So eventually Don improved so that he could come home for 1 day on the weekend. And so this is a Hoyer lift, and this is mounted on top of the Rambler that they had. And so Peggy stayed pretty fit in those days because she could muscle him around, man, and she would pump up the hydraulic pump and move him around. So they loaded him up into the Rambler, and they came to Appleton, which is where my family lived. And this is me with our new puppy. So I guess they couldn't resist coming and seeing the new puppy. So eventually he got out, so he spent 3 years in the hospital. And then they bought a house on Juneau Road, which I think was more wheelchair accessible, and sort of a bigger house. And then started the family gatherings, and Peggy being the master hostess, you know, both sets of parents, you know, brother, sister, and their entire family. They always had cats, always had like 2 cats. They're always indoor cats. And here's Peggy showing off her sense of humor. You can always tell she's got a certain smile on her face when she thinks she's being really cute. So Don realized that, you know, Peggy quit teaching and was 24/7 taking care of him. And Don realized pretty early on that Peggy needed breaks, and you'll hear a story later about sort of how that first started. But Peggy started traveling, and in order for Peggy to leave, somebody had to stay with Don, and so sort of started this huge cycle of caretakers. So they would get medical students, they would get foreign exchange students. So this couple was sort of the first couple that cared for them. They're from Brazil, and they were both here for 5 years at the university. And so they would take care of Don. But the unique thing about Peggy is that Peggy kept in touch with people. And so they went back to Brazil when they were done studying, but she kept in touch with them. And here she is visiting them later. So the first secret to friendship is keep in touch. And one of the ways that Peggy did that was writing. And I was talking to Gerda, and she was saying, "Oh, Peggy's so good at writing. She always knows exactly what to say." And I'd been, you know, cleaning out Peggy's desk that day, and I said, "Well, that's because she had a reference book that she used." And Gerda was like, "Oh, she cheated." I said, "No, it's not cheating. I'm sure most of it was her own thoughts. It just sort of gets you started." So this particular version of it is out of print, and actually the next one is as well, but they're still available. And I managed to get all that I could find throughout the country, which is, I don't know, 25 or something that are in the dining hall. So I hope that those of you who are prone at all to write, or maybe they even hate to write. Peggy hated to write. I don't know if people knew that, but she did not like to write. But she did it because she was taught that that was how you stay in touch. So I hope you will think of Peggy when you use this book. So this began Peggy's adventures throughout the world. So sort of the deal was that she could go anywhere, that she could be back in 10 days. And she traveled about 4 times a year. Don was good at investing money, so that's how they could do that. This was a trip that she took in 1968 to Seattle. So this is her good friend Janice and her daughters drove up the California coast and went to Seattle on the World's Fair. So this is neighbor Geika and Herman in their younger years. And so Peggy would always meet the new neighbors and have them come to the house so that Don could participate and meet people. And this is sort of also, even between stays, just running to the store, Peggy didn't like to leave Don for more than 10 or 15 minutes. So they would actually recruit kids from the neighborhood to come, and there's a few of those in the audience as well today, who would come and stay with Don while she was gone. So the neighbors were always good resources for sort of finding people to stay with Don. So this is Geika. So she had just met Gerda and William, who was here studying. And Gerda had just finished her nursing degree. And so she was the next sort of long-term care person for Don. And again, the amazing thing about Peggy is that they not only become friends, but really they become her Belgium family. So when I was about 12, there were changes happening in our household, and Peg and Don heard about it, so they came to Appleton. And Peggy took me, and I remember this very clearly, she took me down below where the canoe is so that we could have a private talk, because my parents were divorcing. And Peggy had unique vocal cords. So most vocal cords are really tight little strings that are, sort of work like strings on a guitar. And Peggy's were sort of more like noodles. And she got treatment for this, but it was sort of the secret into, you could tell when she was emotional because you could tell it with her voice. So this is how I remember it went. I just want you to know that if you need anything, that I'm here for you. And when Peggy said that, that's exactly what happened. Peggy was there for you. So it sort of began the era of the cabin. So both of their parents were still alive, and they loved to go to Nebraska for the summer. So Peggy's father built a cabin. Peggy's uncle had the land where the lake was dug because of Highway 80 went through. And when Don heard about the lake and that there was a cabin in the works, he actually had the lake stocked with fish. So he had it stocked with bass and catfish and crappie. They were both planners. Again, it's the draw, so Peggy was always loved to have people over. And so this is their families and her uncle and aunt also. So this is the paddle boat. So this is Aunt Teresa and Peggy in the paddle boat. This is the real early years. And this is me. So I age 13, so I would spend summers with them in the cabin. And I caught this 12.5-pound catfish, which was I got a Master Angler Award in Nebraska for. It was very thrilling at the time. And Peggy's father, Fred, was 80 years old at this time, and their roof needed to be replaced. So Ann and Peggy didn't want him up on the roof. So I was determined to be the most able-bodied person. So at the age of 13, I roofed my first house because of Peggy and Don. And that was just sort of the beginning. So I also helped put in the dock because Don wanted a pontoon boat so that he could go out on the lake. The pontoon boat came in parts, and it was a kit that we assembled. When the their cabin is the one on the right here. And when the sliding door was sort of stopping working, Don, would talk to me and say, go underneath the house and look and see what you see, and then come back, and I'd tell him what I saw, and then we'd make a list, and I'd go to the hardware store, and, I need one lag bolt, and, and then I'd come back, and then he'd tell me exactly what to do with everything. So as a consequence, I have very high mechanical comprehension, which has come in handy in my life. And it's very true for so many of the kids that worked, because of their situation, got to do things. The lake was paradise for kids. You got to drive the swamp buggy, which went on land and in the water. Don liked to buy gadgets, and he bought this bow and arrow for fishing. And this is my cousin Laura, who, according to Peggy's Christmas letters, I was very disappointed that she was the first one that caught a carp with that. But there's also photographic proof. And this is his mother and his sister, my mother, Xenia, fishing on the pontoon boat, which he loved to go out on that. And so it was a big draw. I'm sure, how many people have been into Nebraska to visit them here? Yeah. It was always a come to Nebraska. And people did, because it was a great destination. And so this is my sister Sandy and her husband and his mother, my mother, and this was right before my mother passed away. But again, everybody liked to come to Nebraska, and they were always very welcoming. So this is, Don eventually got a van, so that it was easier to get him around. This was a young woman who helped care for him in Nebraska. And she was sort of in a challenging situation, so they actually brought her back to Madison for her to finish her GED and sort of be their daughter for a year. So this sort of began Peggy's travels. So this is 1968 to Hawaii with her friend Larry. This is 72 in Jamaica, also with Larry. Here's Peggy feeding a hummingbird on her finger. Peggy had a pen pal since she was a young teenager, and kept in touch with her for, her entire life. But the difference with Peggy is that she would go and visit her. And so this was her visiting her in England, which is where she lived. She was quite athletic in her days, so this is her cross-country skiing, downhill skiing in our backyard, ice skating with some friends and neighbors. The Tower of Pisa in Italy with her aunt. Egypt in 1978. Mexico with this blonde lady. And when Peggy sort of entered into hospice, I was working at going through her 7,500 slide collection. She took a lot of slides because she would come home and share them with Don. So it's sort of how Don experienced the trips with her. So she had a huge collection of slides. 1980, she came and visited us. I'd moved to California, and my sister and I went backpacking to Yosemite. That's a cute picture. Isn't that a cute picture of her? It's one of my favorites. She went on a mule riding trip down to the Grand Canyon with my cousin Laura. And Peggy, this is Peru, so she would always buy local artisans' work and bring home things from her travels. This is also Peru. And she was always willing to go along, so here she is with her face all painted. She managed to go to some pretty remote places, so, runway and gravel and small airplanes to get there. Here she went to Kenya with her friend Mary Jean Beatty. And this is so Peggy, you know, she's such the communicator. You know, you check out her body language, she's leaning in, she's obviously communicating with this person, you know, despite, you know, who knows if they even spoke English together, but they're obviously having a moment, and Peggy was very good at that. And then she was willing to be the brunt of the joke by having a spear to her heart. Again, she didn't see that smile. See, I'm being funny. Here she is on a air balloon ride. She said it was the best part of Kenya, going up and over and seeing the Serengeti and seeing the animals. This is the Amazon jungle with her friend Jean Potter. You know, and they have fun. You know, they just have fun when they go on vacation. Here she is touching a tortoise from the Galapagos Islands. I don't think you get to do that anymore. And here's this blonde again. They went on a rafting trip down the Colorado, and she told me that this was the first time that Peggy had done camping or rafting, and it was like taking a kid with you because she was so excited about both. And she and Peggy slept in the tent, and the husband slept underneath the stars. But they had a great time. And here she is in Scotland, again with her aunt. This is her friend Libby. So again, they would always find interesting things or people to take pictures with. They're in Israel. So one of the second secret to Peggy's secrets of friendship is to schedule and spend quality time together. And that she did. And here she is showing off her buoyancy in the Dead Sea. And this is her close group of friends. I think many of the PEO, I'm not sure if they're all PEO, but there's a group, at least some of these, who would have I think it started off as lunches, and then they eventually became coffee group together, but definitely scheduled time with friends. And this begins, so every January she would get out of Wisconsin and go to someplace warm. So her friend Jean Potter was her favorite companion for that. And sort of this is a tour of bathing suits throughout the decades of the two of them, various beaches, quite sunburnt there. And, you know, Peggy never admitted to it, but she was really very brave, I think. You know, I would not let 5 macaws sit on me that close, because I know what they can do. And this was in Florida. She went to Norway in 1990. So she was actually just taking shorter trips because Don was having more health issues during this time. And again, also in Norway. She got to go to a short trip to Belize again to go snorkeling. Don passed away in 1991. So he actually survived as a quadriplegic for 31 years, which set records at the time for longevity, because there's a lot of things that get to quadriplegics. And it was just absolutely because of Peggy's loving care that he survived that long. And they were really sort of the first power couple that I knew, you know. Sort of their roles were a little bit reversed. You know, Peggy was the brawn in the relationship, but they sure could get through anything together. So Don passed away, and we had another family gathering in Nebraska. All of us came to the lake, of course, and we had a service at Fort McPherson, which is an outdoor site, and we had a bouquet, and we were all sitting in folding chairs, and the woman that was with him in the wheelchair van played guitar and was singing "Dog and the Butterfly," and a butterfly came in and landed on the bouquet, and then it flew up and it circled around Peggy, and then it sort of did a couple circles all the way around the entire group that was there that day. And so ever since then, it sort of began the butterfly era. So butterflies sort of represented dawn spirit to many of us. So now Peggy can go on longer trips. So, Peggy studied everything she did. She studied how to remember names. She studied all kinds of stuff. It's not coincidence that she had the skills that she had, but she also studied traveling. So, there were many places that she could now go to. So this is quite a long trip that her friends took her off on to go to Nova Scotia. And she's, again, traveling with this blonde lady, and it wasn't until I got to this photo that I saw, oh my gosh, I could tell by that look in her eye, that's Margaret Hickman. That's who that blonde lady is, because, these are like 30 and 40 years ago, even though I know some of these people, I didn't recognize them. But, they're having fun together. So Peggy was very aware when she traveled to third world countries that it was challenging for people with disabilities. And Don and another quadriplegic started up an organization that recycled wheelchairs. And they would actually have inmates repair the wheelchairs. So they loaded up this school bus full of equipment, and Peggy donated Don's van, and they were driven to Guatemala, and it became an ambulance for bringing people from up in the mountains down to the city for hospital visits. And this is the same woman that arrived in a wheelbarrow that left in a wheelchair. So this is, again, with her friend Libby. Now they're headed to India. So the woman that they sat next to was actually living in California, but she was going home to visit her family in India. And unlike most of us, Peggy would converse with them and somehow manage to exchange phone numbers and contact information and become lifelong friends. So this woman considers, it's not actually this woman, she was taking the picture. I called her and she says, no, I'm not that pretty. But anyway, it sort of represents what, this was the stewardess, she said. But, Peggy's visited her, she's visited Peggy. So the third secret to Peggy's friendships is to make new friends. And you never know where it is that you're going to meet your next new friend. So they were in the Taj Mahal, 1993. She's riding a camel. Again, she's pretty adventuresome. So this was a trip that she took by herself up to the Canadian Rockies, a helicopter trekking trip. So that you'd ride in the helicopter and then they'd drop you off in places and you'd go trekking. They also went rafting on that same trip. And then there was a sort of another campaign with the wheelchairs, and they sent a cargo load of wheelchairs to China, and Peggy was and these are the two mechanics that went with her. But she was sort of the ambassador of that trip and delivered the wheelchairs. I got treated like a dignitary in China. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people who've been to all 7 continents. So Peggy loved penguins and wanted to go to Antarctica. So this is December of 1993 when she went to see penguins. And this one, it looks like she's really suffering on this trip, but it's really quite not too much suffering going on. And then I saw this photo. It's like, oh, who is my aunt about to kiss? And then I looked at the next slide. Oh, Eileen's obviously rubbing noses. So this is a greeting tradition. Maybe someone knows better than I in either Australia or New Zealand. And again, camels, even though camels aren't indigenous, they were riding camels together. Again, having a good time. This is Peggy with the kangaroo. She went on a cruise to Alaska. So I've actually got a map in the other room I have attempted to gather information on all of her trips, and I've put sort of pin things indicating it. And so some of the cruises are marked with a yellow string on the map, but please take a look at that because it's pretty impressive. So she went on this trip with Laura, and again they went rafting. Another cruise, she went up the Danube with some friends, and one in Germany, do as the Germans do. She also liked polar bears, so there's polar bears right in the bottom there. So she went up to Churchill in Canada to see them. And again, Peggy would always find an amusing place to have her photo taken. She does have that look in her eye again. So, Peggy had traveled with some of us quite a bit, her nieces and nephews quite a bit, but she really wanted the whole family to go, and, we couldn't quite agree, Linda didn't want to go on cruise, and, somebody else wanted to go here or there, so it was like talking to us a couple years, and finally she said, okay, here's the deal. Says, I'll pay your way, we're going to the Baltic, and this is the date. And absolutely everybody came. So all the nieces and nephews, their spouses, their children, they all came on this trip. It was a great cruise to the Baltic Sea. I think it was 21 days, I believe. Ty and I took the cheaper than getting dresses. We just got used tuxedos. So then Peggy went to India with her good friend Marie McCabe. Again, here's Peggy thinking she's awfully cute. Here's a restaurant in Bangkok called the Cabbage and Condom Inn. And after dinner they hand out condoms apparently. So, but that's where she took her picture. So Peggy was a very generous friend. So these are the group that she traveled with in 1962. Her good friend Janice, thank you, losing it, was by this time, which was 2012, had passed away. But now Peggy's good friends with both of her daughters, and kept in touch with them. And Christine was having health challenges and needed heart surgery, but could not get it. They would not do it in Madison. They thought it was too high of a risk. So Peggy made a phone call. So my sister's married to a cardiologist who works at the Cleveland Clinic. And he said, oh, sure, we do those kind all the time. So Peggy hired a medical transport plane and took her to Cleveland Clinic for that. And that's just sort of just one example of many of Peggy's generosity. So I don't know if you've heard the story about Yasmin. Let's see if I can make this work. So I just received this a couple days ago. So Yasmin is a young girl that Peggy started supporting who lived in Guatemala and sent money through Compassion International since she was age 5 and supported her all the way through high school. So in 2016, she was scheduled to graduate from high school, and the support through that organization ends at high school. And Peggy had been corresponding with this young girl for all these years and really wanted her to go to college. And so, now keep in mind, Peggy at this time had had 2 knee replacements and 3 hip replacement surgeries, and was using a walker to get around. So she talked to her good friend, I'm going to get it, hold on, Hilda, who was another caretaker who's become long-term friend, who is from Guatemala and spoke the language. So Peggy took $5,000 in cash, and they went off to a very, very rural part of Guatemala together. And Peggy made arrangements directly with the university and paid for her education in advance. So I actually emailed her sort of right before I closed out Peggy's computer, and she's been in touch with me and sent this to share. So she's actually going to graduate next year with her degree in civil engineering, I do believe it is. So that sort of just talks about how generous Peggy is. That was Hilda, by the way. So this was the day that they met. So she only got to spend one day with her. So I'm almost at the end. This is the end. All right. So if you could join me in, this is a poem I'm hoping we can read together. So this is one that Libby chose that sort of speaks to her, how she feels about Peggy. So it's in the middle of the page in boldness. So those who do not love don't go away. They walk beside you every day, unseen, unheard, but always near, still missed, still loved, and very dear. So I'd like to invite David Mosner up to. Oh, I'm supposed to do something here. Where am I supposed to do? There.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vicki, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with some of Peggy's friends. I first met Peggy October 9th, 2012, 2 months after I joined the Oakwood Foundation. And here's what I found in my notes from that meeting. And I'll tell you, I wrote all of this days ago because it will seem like I'm repeating other things already been said. But what I wrote was, Peggy is very upbeat and optimistic, a donor with a giving heart. She told me she put her money down for a life lease apartment in Heritage Oaks before the first shovel was in the ground. She said moving to Oakwood Village was the best decision she ever made. Now, after that first meeting, I'm pretty sure that every visit included a treat of some kind and a cup of hot tea. And she was the first person I met with one of those hot water dispensers. I made the mistake of telling my wife about it. We have a hot water dispenser. Excuse me. So sitting at the table with her, I learned that Peggy was a donor in every sense of the word. She lovingly cared for her husband, Don. Her friends literally circle the globe. Her enthusiasm for life led her to look for ways to make a difference. As you just heard, she generously supported a young woman in Guatemala through Compassion International, helping pay for her education, then paid for college. She told me about projects she and fellow members of the PEO Sisterhood were funding to help young women get the most of their education. One place in Madison she loved was the Overture Center. She became personally involved and invested in restoring the Grand Barton organ. Heard lots of stories about the organ. She generously supported her church, Asbury Methodist, the Salvation Army, and had a scholarship at her alma mater, Nebraska Wesleyan University in Lincoln. So my job at the foundation is working with donors and residents, and that job becomes more exciting when the individuals are also excited about making a difference, to see the possibilities, to write a check and smile sincerely when they hand it over. This space, the Center for Arts and Education, was very important to Peggy. She joined dozens of others excited about this special place and supporting improvements in here in 2013 and 2018, and she'd like to know the details. Her gifts helped refresh employee break rooms, improve the Tacoma Westmoreland space, improved acoustics in the Village Inn, helped purchase a bus, supported life enrichment programming, and she showed her appreciation generously for Oakwood employees each year and took special joy being part of the reception that handed checks out to staff. Her last gift is supporting work now on the new Hebron Oaks on top of the hill here. And because she named the Oakwood Foundation in her estate plan, Peggy had told me in advance that she's sending us checks for several years to come. A donor with a giving heart? Yeah. There's a saying I've run across that Peggy and many others of you exemplify, and it's not about giving until it hurts. It's about giving until it feels good. Thank you, Peggy.
Okay, that will make it easier to hear me. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Geke de Vries, and I'm going to tell you something about our neighborhood on Juneau Road and how I met Peggy. It was in the summer of 1979 that I moved to Madison. Herman, my husband, had purchased a house on Juneau Road. While he was at work, I cleaned house to get it ready to move in. One afternoon, the doorbell rang, and there was Helene, who lived across the street. She introduced herself and brought me a zucchini or banana bread. This was something totally new to me. How kind of her to come over and even bring me something. In the Netherlands, where I grew up, it was customary that a new family would invite the neighbors. Here, it was the other way around. The neighbors reached out first. 1 or 2 days later, the doorbell rang again, and Peggy introduced herself. She invited me to come to her house and meet her husband, Don. Don was in a wheelchair. He was paraplegic. Fortunately, Peggy explained, because I didn't even know the word. When coming to the garage, I noticed we walked up a ramp. Don was sitting at a table in his wheelchair. Peggy served a cup of tea, and while we talked, Peggy gave Don his drink and some cookies. Peggy would often invite the neighbors over to her house so Don could be part of it. And we, as neighbors, would organize potluck parties at our homes or in summer in the backyard. Peggy would wheel Don over, and the men, Herb and Herman, would lift the wheelchair with Don up the steps and in the house. As a result, the neighbors around Don and Peggy were very close. They were Dino and Helene Georgelin, Woody and Juanita Dijkman, Herb and Rosemary Wang, Max and Shelley Lagali, Dale and Norman Broon, and Bill and Elma Robert. Herman and I were immediately included in neighborhood activities. And so, coming from the Netherlands, with all my family on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, the neighbors became like family for me in Madison. Here are a few pictures of our gatherings from the early 80s and into the 90s. Herman and I invited the neighbors when my parents came to visit in 1980. And Herb and Rosemary's oldest daughter, Michelle, and I share a birthday on August 3rd. So that was the birthday party that year. And there are pictures of picnics with the neighbors in the backyard. And you can see the families, the Wangs here, And I don't know, Gerda, is that you behind, Woody? Yeah? Okay, I was wondering. And then the next one. And here the Georgians, Helene and Peter and Maria and Juanita Dijkman. And you can see the other table in the back with Don there in his wheelchair. And the Lagali family here, Max and Shelley with the 3 children. And my father and brother were visiting, and so my father is here with Herman. And here the table where Don and Peggy and Bill, Robert and Helene, and then on the left is Herman's son Mark. So we often had these gatherings, and they were always wonderful. They also looked out for me when Herman was traveling. Either Peggy or Rosemary would invite me over for Thanksgiving dinner, so I would not be alone. One winter, it was the first weekend in December, when we would open up our house for our annual holiday art sale with several other artists. Mid-afternoon on Sunday, it started snowing, so all the participants left as soon as possible as the roads were getting slippery. It snowed for 2 or 3 days, the longest snowfall I can remember, resulting in at least 2 feet of fluffy white all around us. On Monday or Tuesday afternoon, we got a call from Peggy. She explained that when they had a big snowstorm in Nebraska, the neighbors would get together. They would look in their refrigerator and bring whatever they had, putting together a true potluck. This was something new to me. Instead of being snowed in and isolated, we had a great party at Don and Peggy's. Among our neighbors, Peggy was the one who had a snowblower. After it snowed, Peggy would bundle up and get the blower out. She wouldn't only remove her own snow, but would also clean the sidewalk in front of Dino and Helene and Woody and Juanita. When we had a heavy snowfall, Peggy would even come over to our side of the street and take care of our sidewalk. As we got to know each other better, we also found out how much Peggy liked to travel. Sometimes Peggy would call and ask me to come over when she needed some advice on what to take along for the trip. Peggy always dressed beautifully, as you saw in the previous pictures, and kept it up till the very end. When I walked in, many beautiful outfits were spread out over the twin beds in the guest room. What to bring along, as the suitcase had its limits. It was always fun to help Peggy make decisions and make sure she was prepared for all upcoming events, even dining at the captain's table during a cruise. After 12 years on Juneau Road, we moved to Merrill Springs Road in 1991. The previous owners had taken the refrigerator, and we really needed one because we were renovating the house. Peggy, bless her heart, offered us her old refrigerator that was stored in the basement. Woody Dijkman helped with the transportation in the back of our small pickup truck. I actually think he hung on to it in the back. He looked at what was to be our new abode. The house needed an awful lot of work. When Woody got home, his remark was, "Are they out of their minds?" Even though we had moved, we kept in touch. The neighbor women continued to go out for lunch to celebrate each other's birthday. Juanita invited the neighbors over for coffee when my father and brother came to visit. So here you can see my father on the left, Alma, Juanita, and then myself, my brother, Rosemary, and Bill Roberts. Or Peggy would invite us for dinner in the sunroom. And here again, a little larger group because the table is bigger. And also, at Juanita's, that would be in the morning, so the men would be at work, except for those who didn't work or were retired. And here, of course, everybody could come. And the last picture is of a Christmas event at Rosemary's home. with the boys, and I think Michelle and Omar. I think we met Omar for the first time. And then Peggy is on crutches. I don't know what happened to her at that time, but they must have been in the 90s. When Peggy moved to Oakwood, she invited us to see her new home and for lunch or dinner at the restaurant. For quite a few years, Peggy would join us for plays at APT in Spring Green and for Christmas dinner at our house. Peggy, always gracious and generous, knew where she could get good food to contribute to the celebration. Through Helene and the Greek church, she always ordered spanakopita, or she brought pies from Perkins. They were freshly baked and delicious. Even last summer during COVID, Rosemary and Herb found a way for us to get together by inviting Peggy, Herman, and me for a delicious outdoor dinner in their backyard. I fondly remember Peggy inviting us up to Black Hawk for a Sunday brunch or a dinner with other guests, neighbors, friends, Marie, Gerda and William, Emily and Bram, and others. In later years, when walking became more difficult, we would get together for breakfast or lunch at Oakwood, and when Gerda was in town, with friends from International Women. Thank you, Peggy, for making me feel welcome in a new country and as neighbors on Juno Road, for your friendship and kindnesses over all these many years. We were so very lucky to meet you and Don. I miss you and now cherish the wonderful memories of the time we shared. All of it will forever remain in my heart. Thank you.
Geike has just shared some delightful memories of our times with Peggy with us. Peggy's life was not about her, but the lives of the many people she touched, the lasting friendships she made with people from many backgrounds and walks of life. They brought the world closer to her husband, Don, who could not travel. As they helped with Don's personal care and his intellectual interests, they became a part of Peggy and Don's family. Over the years, the family expanded to include all of you gathered here today. Each of you helped create for Peggy and Don the remarkable life we all admired. They demonstrated that even in adversity, life is good. Peggy would be uncomfortable having herself be the center of attention. She was always focused on the lives and circumstances of the many wonderful people that brought joy to her and Don's lives. If she were here today, she would be mingling among us, thanking us for coming, inquiring about some little aspect of our lives, and of course, offering us a treat. So I thank you on behalf of Peggy for being here today to reflect upon our dear friend and aunt, Peggy Lindberg. You meant the world to her.
I was a caregiver for Don from 83 to 87. But there is so much more to tell. We also became everlasting friends. My very first appointment with Peggy and Don, I had to cancel because I had the flu. I felt really embarrassed when I had to call Peggy, and she said, "Is there something I can do for you?" That set the tone. It was a pleasure and a privilege to take care of Don. He was such a wonderful man. Friendly, smart, compassionate, optimistic, full of energy and plans. He knew so much about everything and lots of people asked him for advice. Also when we bought our first car, we called Don and asked, should we buy this one? And Don said yes, so we bought it. Don was Peggy's love of her life. Peggy and Don set an example for William and me, how to live one's life. No matter what, go for it. They showed us about love, friendship, endurance, acceptance, and moving forward. Peggy and Don also shared their friends with us. We kind of became part of the Juneau neighborhood. We got to spend quite some time with Janice and Clayton, went to see Jean Potter, met Libby and Tony, and so many more. Peggy cherished friendship very highly. New friends came, but old friends remained wonderful. It seemed like Peggy had an endless basket of friendship and love. After Emily was born in May '87, I stopped being caregiver for Don, but nothing changed in our relationship. We still had a lot of contact with each other, and we stayed in contact after we left Madison in '88. 1 year after we left Madison, William spent the summer working in Troy. Emily and I were with him, and of course, we also came to see Peggy and Don before flying back to Europe. After that, we returned to Madison every 3 years. We always combined the trip to the US with a visit to Juneau Road 5111. Don passed away and was missed very much. And now I give the word to Emily, our daughter.
I have known Peggy my whole life. Since I was a little girl, the 9th of February has always been a special day on our calendar. We had a calendar that Mama and I made together, and the 9th of February has, as long as I can remember, always been decorated with cats, flowers, and butterflies. Peggy has always been a very special person in my life. Growing up, she was the one we would visit in Madison, and this was always a special and exciting adventure. Once in the US, Anna Laura and I always had the best time. We would bake cookies with Peggy, visit her friends who had a pool, dress up for tea time out on the deck, go play miniature golf together, go out for ice cream, have tree time with the cats, and one summer we joined Peggy to Nebraska, where we had the best time at the cabin.
Okay. Oh, I don't know where I am. Okay, I'm here. Next to our visits in Madison, we kept in contact with Peggy by phone. We knew what was going on in each other's lives. Peggy gave us updates of her friends and relatives, and so did we. Peggy visited us in Belgium twice, and we had a wonderful time sightseeing, showing Peggy around in our small but beautiful country, and meeting our relatives, friends, and even neighbors. During Emily's first year at university, in February 2006, Emily and I came to Madison for a week. Peggy just had hip surgery, but this did not stop us from having a good time together, and we were able to help her out. The next year, I returned with Anna Laura, and we tried out Peggy's new guest room at Oakwood. A tradition was born. For the next 12 years, I came to visit Peggy 1 week in February. Beats me why I picked February in Madison, Wisconsin. But somehow it worked out that way. William, Emily, Anna Laura also visited Peggy on several occasions. Again, it struck me how easily Peggy had made new friends. Walking the hallways in Oakwood was quite something. Peggy knew everyone by name and would ask how people were doing, how their family was, how their trip went. Peggy made everyone feel at ease and was genuinely interested in one's life. And again, she shared her friends with me. I became part of the Friday morning coffee group, got to know new neighbors. Sorry.
In 2015, Bram and I were in Florida for flight training. We were going to finish our stay in the US with a road trip from Miami to Chicago. I found it really important that we drove up to Madison as well because I really wanted Peggy and Bram to meet each other. Little did we know what the future would bring. Bram and I moved to the US, to Phoenix, Arizona, 3 months later. We visited Peggy on a few occasions when we wanted to get away from the Arizona heat. I have always wanted to become a pilot, and Peggy has always known me as the little girl who wanted to become a pilot. In 2019, I started to work as an airline pilot, first officer for Air Wisconsin. The training was up in Appleton. During the weekends, I would visit Peggy, and it was just wonderful to see a familiar and supporting face during this intense and challenging period. Peggy was so proud of me and so happy for me for reaching my dream. I stayed with her for 2 days after finishing my very first flight with passengers, and she was so happy and touched when she saw me in uniform. She was very clear, though, that she did not like the hat as a part of uniform. She thought it was way too manly, and she really hoped they would design other hats for female pilots. In January 2020, Bram and I moved to Madison. It was so nice to live close to Peggy. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we were not allowed to visit Peggy during a period of a few months. But I made sure to call her every week. Bram and I biked over to Oakwood a couple of times to wave at her while she was standing in front of her window. And she was always interested in hearing our travel stories. We would tell her about her flights, especially the ones to Lincoln, Nebraska, where we stayed at the Cornhusker Hotel, and then Peggy would tell us about the dances she used to attend at the Cornhusker Hotel.
The pandemic hit hard, and for Peggy it was even more painful because social life in Oakwood was almost non-existing. On the phone we could hear Peggy was suffering. We were not allowed to travel to the US, but then on the 8th of November last year, the borders opened again for non-citizens, and I traveled to Madison on the 9th. Peggy was in Tabor, and I'm very thankful I was able to spend 2.5 weeks with her. To end, I want to share a magical moment. During one of my visits, Peggy and I watched the eclipse of the moon. We sat in front of the window. The lights were out. There was conversation. There was silence. And we saw the moon change above the treetops. It was just the moon, Peggy, and I. No more, no less.
Peggy always brought people together. It's why we're here today. Peggy's ability to make friends and positively influence people went around the globe. I was fortunate at a very young age to be invited over to Peggy and Don's place many times. Those visits were filled with lots of fun, storytelling, and laughter. We had many meals on Juneau Road. And one of my favorites was Peggy's famous stuffed pork chop. I still keep that in my repertoire today. Occasionally, during dinner or a slideshow, as you notice, slides are very important to the family, 2 cats would sneak out, take a quick look at us, and then go back to their room. I recall helping Don build a computer. I was excited, but I was also very nervous. I didn't know what a computer was, but it was important. And he said, "Don't worry. It's like playing Battleship, Martha. I'll tell you where to put the different colored wires and how this is going to happen." So while Don and I were having fun, or he was keeping me entertained, Peggy and Mom would be in the next room laughing and talking away. I remember the night that Don called my mother over and asked my mom to go and travel with Peggy. Don did not want to hold Peggy back. He wanted her to see the world. He wanted her to be happy, have fun, explore, and have new adventures. Some of those adventures were small, like going to the Hill Farm Park or Black Hawk Country Club for cross-country skiing. Or Peggy and my mom might spend the entire day shopping, which was in preparation for a cruise. Those clothes were very, very important. But they always made time for their adventures, and they always had fun no matter what they were doing. Peggy had an ability to bring all of us along on her adventures. She was a great photographer, and this is how Don and the rest of us got to see the world. But the best part of the pictures were the stories she told about them. She shared funny stories about what happened on the trip, who they met, and what they did. These stories and pictures always created lots of laughter. Peggy's storytelling and laughter were very special. I remember another adventure when Peggy joined the Matcombs and my family for a ski trip up in northern Wisconsin. We were all downhill skiing, and Peggy was in the lodge watching us. So my parents suggested that my brother and I should take the afternoon off and go cross-country skiing with Peggy. And we thought that was a fine idea. So Peggy, Martin, and I collected our cross-country ski gear and took off. Now, my parents thought we were going to go cross-country skiing on the golf course. But Martin and I had decided we should try the world-famous Birkebinder course. For those of you that don't know what the Birkebinder course is, it's a famous cross-country ski race. It's about 35 miles long through very, very hilly woods. We obviously were not going to do the whole track, but we thought it would be fun to say we'd skied the Birkie, and Peggy was all game. So we went out, and we were doing very well for about the first hour until we hit this very big downhill slope. There was no stopping Peggy. She went off the path, through the weeds and the brambles, and ended up hugging a tree to stop. Martin and I were very scared. We quickly descended. Peggy was laughing, and Martin and I were very distressed, and we decided it was time to turn around and go back to the hotel. My parents were not pleased with my brother and I about this particular adventure on the Birkie until they heard Peggy retell the story, and she laughed the whole way through. In Peggy's professional life, she was an educator, a caregiver, and she enhanced people's lives wherever she was every day. She was a member of PEO, which is a philanthropical organization where friendship is the cornerstone. Peggy, Jeanette, and Rose made sure that Kathy and I became PEOs, which was a major milestone bringing us into adulthood and a much larger circle of friends. This is one of the many ways that Peggy took a personal interest in me and made me feel special. As some of you know, for many years, close to 20 years, I took residency here with Peggy at Oakwood on Friday and Saturday nights during the ski season. Many times we would meet in this very auditorium for a show. I would arrive late, driving from Chicago, but Peggy would always hold a seat for me and be so glad I was here and I had arrived safely. Peggy and I would spend our evenings snacking on sweets and talking. There was no stopping the sweets. They were there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She would always want to know what I was doing and where I was going. And I, in turn, would want to learn about where I should travel to next, or talk about farm stories when my parents had visited in Nebraska. Peggy would then send me to bed like a mother would, because she wanted me to be prepared for the next day. Peggy was family to me. She was gracious, she was kind, she loved people, and had the ability to create this special bond and bring people together. We are all blessed to have been part of Peggy's family.
This poem was written by my mother 45 years ago in the last few months of her life. She was taking a poetry class at the place where she lived. The cycle does not change. The nighttime lengthens, and I take in my last sun ray. It's time to go and dance my last dance of the season. I rejoin the earth from which I came. Another season, another world. I'll be danced by the wind again.
Papillon, mon ami. Butterfly, my friend. Whatever is lovely, think about such things. Philippians 4:8. Like the butterfly, flowers are so beautiful. But the difference between the two is butterflies can touch the sky as they flutter towards the heavens, because of the transformation they have completed from one phase of life to another. Butterflies, like angels, have eyes all about them, their entire bodies and their wings. Ezekiel 10:12. Butterflies, flowers, angels, ethereal imagery, paintings by the hand of God. So touching it was at Don's memorial, as we've heard, at his interment, that a butterfly came and landed on their bouquet of flowers, just as the woman who had been Don's helper was singing Dog and the Butterfly. Those in attendance recall with special fondness that it fluttered to and fro for a long time, as it also encircled Peggy and the entire group who had gathered. Henceforth, the butterfly became a symbol to Peggy and those who knew her story as one of a beautiful, angelic presence. And it was a tender, sweet moment when niece Vicky came to visit Peggy in the hospital towards the end of her time on earth, when she glanced out the window about the 9th floor to witness 2 species of butterflies flying about in the wind, way up high and away from their usual hovering, where they could kiss and drink sweet nectar from the vine. Rather not. This occasion was a gift that, upon sharing, brought smiles and knowing to us listeners. on the topic of secrets to maintaining friendships. One can easily align with the notion that Peggy was a social butterfly with a delicate flair, a friend to all who would make her acquaintance. She adored lingering conversations over dinner, after a meeting, or in a comfy chair by the fire. But even more so, she had a distinctly unique gift for making people feel validated, like somehow their presence in her life mattered. And it did. We only need ask her rock. As Peggy described in her last Christmas email, Marie, who witnessed Peggy's gift of nurturing and cultivating friendships for decades, including their own, like no other. Maya Angelou wrote, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty." Such was the case when Don became paralyzed, but neither he nor Peggy ever complained. Rather, they used their experiences for good with an adage, take things as they come and overcome. Mouse in the cabin? Take care of it. Light bulb out, fix it. Wheelchairs needed around the world? Well, by all means, collect them, buy a van, and deliver them. An indigent child in need of an education? Become involved, sign up, give love, give support. Common sense and hugs to many, just when they needed it. And celebrations for all, whenever the occasion was ripe. Church need help? Be a liturgist, pass out programs, sponsor a stained glass window, and teach a woman like me how to prepare communion. Their extra special gifts? Let's just say Emily Post and Dale Carnegie would be proud. Peggy, like the butterfly, could be found at one time or another in every continent of the world. The zebra longwing from South America, the Ulysses from Australia, peacock pansy from South Asia, the monarch from Portugal and Spain to North America, the forest giant owl from Mexico, glasswing from tropical rainforests, Adonis from Europe, and the sunset of Madagascar. At Don's insistence, Peggy would travel to many enchanting, interesting, and adventurous places, where upon her return, she and Don would revisit the sites together through slides and stories that she would later retell to friends, family, at PEO meetings, and to special travel groups. Yes, Peggy, love is like a butterfly, as soft and gentle as a sigh. The multicolored moods of love are like its satin wings. Love makes your heart feel strange inside. It flutters life's soft wings in flight. Love is like a butterfly, a rare and gentle thing.
Well, I was pretty long-winded, so I think we've got a microphone in the room, so if there's other people who'd like to share stories, I'd encourage us to do it there. Linda, are you coming up? Where's Louie?
After listening to these amazing stories, I don't know if I can sing.
Sing. So what we're hoping is to divide the audience, and we're going to sing a song about friendship. So this is my surprise, Peggy. I've been trying to come up with a good song about friendship, and this one popped into my head, and it's like, yeah. So
Look who's with us.
I know.
She invited me.
Yes, I did. Come up. All right, you guys get that half. So, how many Girl Scouts? All right. You'll have to help me lead this. We're on this side. I need to see, make, yeah, friends. It's very simple. We all know those words.
Well, teach us
All
one
right,
round.
All right. Make new friends.
It's
They're
too low.
Make new
Friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold.
So,
Let's do it again.
So we're
Another
gonna, okay.
all right,
rehearsal.
one more time. All right. Make
New friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold.
Maybe we should just sing it all
Should we
together.
do a round?
Should we try a round?
Yeah,
All right. All right. Okay, you
Your
guys
side
start.
first. Oh, we'll go first. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold.